It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
We're going back to the United States, and for me, it's just what has me thinking about this crazy stuff is just how we're treating the most vulnerable, how we're treating children, how we're treating people who are sleeping, who are sleeping in their beds. You know,
I was about to say that too.
That's a sign of like, you know, of a civilization of society, that people care about each other, that we care about our children, even though they're not our children. You know, so I want to break down this article real quick about the virus that's going on here, because there's a lot of this paper that just came out from Yale. This is like pretty much what do we know about COVID-19 in kids. So pretty much everyone's saying that sometimes you hear a story about a 9-year-old that gets really sick, or like, but at the same time you hear that kids don't show symptoms. So it's like, what the fuck is going on? So this Yale paper just came out, kind of synthesizing some recent reports. It's unusual that a virus be less severe in children than adults. When it comes to COVID, kids make up just small percentage of severe cases, which is true, which is why it's kind of like how this propaganda is like, yeah, the kids can go back to school. They're just going to cough and be okay, and that's it. So that's kind of what the argument they're using for schools to open, pretty much. You know, kids are not going to get that sick, you know. But at the same time, it's just why they're not getting that sick. What we need to understand that before we start shoving everyone to schools. So unfortunately, we're not waiting for science. We're kind of just going ahead of it. So it just kind of shows you. But also, why are black kids, why are Spanish kids being affected? It's because we have all these pre-existing conditions because of poverty, you know, and racism, and being in shitty communities and neighborhoods and stuff like that. So this is why we're being black children and children of color being affected more by COVID, and these reports kind of show it as well. Asthma, of course. So this report's pretty good. It's a real breakdown of like, if you're concerned about just getting breakdowns of why it's not severe for kids.
Disappearing with the virus.
We see that.
In the chat, Blind Bat is saying, what about the people that are also disappearing with the virus? I'm not sure I know.
I'm talking about kids with COVID-19, so I don't know how I can answer that question. But so pretty much here, I'm gonna share this link so people can see this science that we can talk about here, and not sound like we're just making stuff up. So this is what's going on. Phil can drop the video.
Oh, people! You mean like people who've died? But I think we're talking about minors, because you know the rhetoric that is coming from the White House and other right-wing areas is that the virus does not affect children, or that some of them will say that children cannot be infected. Others will say that if the kids are infected, that, you know, the kids are basically impervious, nothing will happen to them, but the science is saying otherwise.
So Phil's going to drop this clip.
One of the enduring bits of good news about the COVID-19 pandemic is that unlike most viral illnesses where the youngest and oldest are among the most affected, thankfully children do not generally have the severe complications we see in adults.
And new research may be closer to finding out why. Dr. Frank McGeorge is here to explain. Hi, Doc.
Hey, Kim and Devin. Yeah, let me start out by making something clear. It is not that children don't get infected. They do, and they can spread it to other kids and adults. But compared to older adults, kids develop severe illness much less often. And examining why that's the case and why children's immune systems behave differently can give us a clue to how to beat it in adults. Why aren't most kids getting as sick from COVID-19? Well, a recent paper published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences identified several factors that could be responsible. First, younger kids have fewer ACE2 receptors. That's the area on a cell the coronavirus binds to. It's also possible kids have more recently had other coronavirus infections, the ones that cause the common cold, possibly leaving them with some cross protection. Kids with asthma and allergies also tend to have higher levels of cells called eosinophils. That may reduce their risk from COVID. Young immune systems may also get a jump start on the virus. A new study published in the journal Science Translational Medicine looked at the immune response to COVID-19 in 65 children and 65 adults. Researchers found children had evidence of a more active innate immune response. That's the part of the immune system that responds very quickly to an infection. Two substances called interleukin-17A and interferon gamma were especially higher in children compared to adults. On the other side, the study found adults show a more active response when it came to producing antibodies.
Exactly.
Researchers suggest that children may benefit from a more aggressive early response by their immune system, preventing COVID-19 from progressing the way it does in many adults. Now, finally, I want to acknowledge that some kids do develop severe disease. You shouldn't be left with the impression that kids don't die from COVID-19. There have, in fact, been 6 deaths in the 10 to 19 age group in Michigan, but that compares to 1,788 deaths in adults between 70 and 79 and over 2,800 deaths in people over 80. So clearly, this does disproportionately affect older people.
So, Doc, what we're learning here then, what does it suggest about other potential treatments?
Well, if it turns out that the reason that children are less seriously affected is that they have a more active innate or early immune response, then figuring out how to stimulate that in adults.
Yeah, pause the video. Yeah, so Blind Bat beat me to it. I was like trying to shut the fuck up, and Blind Bat beat me to it, right? So, everybody say, well, the kids are not dying from the virus, right? Okay. But the kids are carriers of the fucking virus.
Open the schools. The kids will be okay. Just open the schools up.
Yeah, but if they get their parents sick and one or both of their parents end up in the ICU on a ventilator and then they die, are the kids really impervious to the virus, or did the virus ruin their fucking lives?
Yeah.
If the virus kills their fucking parents, did the virus, or did it not, ruin their fucking lives?
And then it's the mental trauma of it all, which is the next video we're going to talk about next.
And we don't even know the long-term ramifications, because we don't know how these kids are going to grow up and what their pulmonary function is going to be like as they get older. This is a novel coronavirus. It is a coronavirus that we have not seen. We do not know the long-term ramifications yet. But everybody wants to say, oh, just send them off to school. We know what's going to happen. You don't know shit. It'll be best if the least amount of people get this shit.
Yeah. We need to do the science, but the science is trying to catch up to these weird men who want to open these schools and open movie theaters. But that's the thing, the next video I want to talk about, which is just like, I can't imagine being a kid now and like dealing with this mental stress of like, not only I might get my grandparents sick, I might get sick, I might get my grandparents sick, I might get my parents sick. I can't go to school anymore. I can't see my friends anymore. Like how are kids, how teenagers, anyone below 18?
Because the thing is, like, you have to honor the issues with the parents, because in our secular society, more and more people, both men and women, are pushing off having and rearing children until later in life. So by the time the kids get into school age, the parents are now in that, yellow, orange, red area as far as risk is concerned to have an adverse reaction or an adverse, you end up with a bad situation.
Conditions they might not even know they have might get exposed because they
right. And the thing is, like, we used to think of parents as 25 with 2 kids. No, now it's 45 with 2 kids, right?
Yeah. So I want to play this clip real quick. This to show like what's the mental health
milestone in this pandemic, and as so many of our lives remain upended, we take a look now at how these uncertain times are impacting our children. Experts say the virus plus the isolation of virtual learning and social distancing from their friends all create a recipe for anxiety and depression. ABC's Ariel Reshef has this report.
Mad. Why do you feel mad, Buglet? Because of this pandemic thing.
Their feelings so many kids are experiencing during these highly unusual times. 9-year-old Anderson Fields, one of an estimated 4.4 million children nationwide coping with anxiety amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and 1.9 million dealing with depression.
That's crazy.
I want my kids to be okay.
Disruptions to daily life.
That's a sad stat in this country.
Mask mandates, throwing off routines and throwing families for a loop. The youngest generation navigating the isolation and uncertainty of this new normal. Childhood anxiety already on the rise prior to the pandemic. According to recent studies, there has been a 17% jump in anxiety.
Yeah, you have
diagnoses
crazy
in
kids
children
have anxiety?
17 and
This is
younger
sad,
over
man.
the past 10 years. And Dr. Dave Anderson of the Child Mind Institute says the current
Kids
crisis
with
is
anxiety.
accelerating this trend.
So the research that we do have available
And depression.
During the pandemic,
They should just be in a yard with a stick, just digging in dirt. That should make them happy.
In anxiety and depression symptoms.
New Jersey mom Nisha Clark says
Sharing
she's seeing
boogers
a
with their
clear
friends and
impact
shit,
on her
like-
13-year-old daughter Taylor and her 9-year-old son Anderson. Her youngest still struggling like so many others to adjust to all of this change.
My kid definitely needs structure, a lot of structure. And it's hard to create structure and work and get him through online school and manage his emotions and manage my emotions. It's just tough. And he's 9 years old. And how is he supposed to process all of this?
Nisha says she noticed a shift in her son's behavior as the pandemic dragged on.
What are some of the different behavioral patterns that you're seeing in Anderson that you didn't see before?
He's definitely more anxious. We've had a couple situations where even during just kind of the normal routine of the day, or once we were, with some friends, socially distanced at, a little backyard gathering, and he just kind of froze. And he said a scary thought went through his head. And, I went to hug him and his heart was beating out of his chest. And I had to hold him for a little while. And he said, the world's really scary right now.
And the Clarks are not alone. Nisha is part of a network of families supporting one another, their kids sharing a similar experience. Her friend, New Jersey mom Cynthia Verhoeven, says social distancing only enhances the anxiety her 6-year-old daughter Maddie naturally feels.
So my youngest in particular has had a challenging time adjusting to all of these changes. And some of the things that would normally put a kid that's more anxious at ease, you can't do. They can't really kind of play around with their friends or have their mom or dad stand next to them and walk them in. So it kind of sets the tone for just really kind of a buildup, right, of anxiety. And so you kind of have that element. And then when they get into the classroom, they're 6 feet apart and they're really tethered to their desks, which, for young kids is highly unusual. It's not what a typical first grade classroom would look like.
Dr. Anderson says he's seeing more kids suffering from varying degrees of depression and anxiety.
I think early on in the pandemic, we saw kids who were very, very worried about their parents getting sick. So little was known kind of at the outset about transmission and how that was happening that we saw kids who were very worried about, packages passing even within a few feet of people, even when they were outside. What we're seeing now is an increase in that anxiety as schools begin to reopen.
And experts say, especially now, it's critical to watch your children carefully for signs of emotional distress, even if they've never exhibited them before.
What you can watch first is body language, which is that if a kid is, about to confront a situation they may be anxious about, they're going to appear kind of inhibited, they're going to appear shy, they're going to be trying to avoid that particular thing. Some kids may even act out in advance of situations that they're anxious about, where they yell or they tantrum, or they try to avoid it as much as they possibly can. Our repeated question asking, so a kid is looking for repeated reassurance, asking the same question over and over. Are you sure we're going to be safe when we do this? Are you sure that grandpa's okay?
That must suck. Damn, a parent must be so tough right now. Fuck.
Falling asleep just because they're anxious about what might happen that next day, or they're thinking about lots of different things.
And with millions of kids in the U.S. learning from home, experts say virtual schooling can exacerbate the psychological toll.
Kids will tell us they're worried that they're not able to maintain their focus as easily, or they get a lot more burned out by spending more time on virtual learning, or they're worried that they really can't seem to kind of follow the class because it just isn't the same format that they're used to or way of presenting material.
But while online schooling isn't perfect, Dr. Anderson says it is essential for kids to maintain a connection. And as for some concrete ways to ease your child's anxiety,
so what we focus on in therapy is exposing kids in very small doses to the things
Oh
they're
my
afraid of. And for kids who don't have clinically relevant anxiety, you can do the same thing at home. if you're trying to help your kid confront their fears, what really helps after the fact is to remind them that it wasn't as bad as they thought.
Essential tools to help kids cope and families find their way through this extraordinary time. Ariel Reshef, ABC News, New York.
All right, I'm caught between two premises. One of them being that I'm very disappointed that people are looking at these things and they're saying, wow, kids are feeling anxiety.
I mean, Dr. Virginia, school just stopped. Imagine people don't go to school anymore. They don't know school's happening anymore. It's like no structure to someone's like,
but
the world is ended for a lot of kids all of a sudden.
Understand why
don't have to no structure. It's a lot of things.
Let me finish this thought. Because I'm coming at it from a completely different angle.
Yeah.
I'm hearing these people talk while these kids they're suffer from anxiety, and we're noticing, because that's the word, that's the operative word. We're noticing 1.9 million with anxiety and depression. But the problem is that a lot of these kids had anxiety and depression before the Rona struck, and
for me, these local news stories, that's the thing. These local news stories, it's like it kind of just lands on the one kid. This kid has anxiety. What's up with this one kid? This kid can get over it, and your kid can get over it. But it totally ignores the structural, giant, systemic problems that why we have all these people, all these children who should just be worried about blowing flowers in the trees and stuff like that, climbing trees, have depression, anxiety. Why do we have so many children who have depression and anxiety?
I feel like the Rona only added to what was already there.
Exactly.
People, I don't want to hear from you. Oh, we're seeing anxiety and depression. It's like, but a lot of these kids were already anxious and depressed. What were you not seeing before? Why were you not paying attention before? But then there's another side.
The mass shootings, the suicides, all the stuff that children went up, So
right, but then
people totally ignore that. So
yeah, but then I think about it from another perspective, which is like, well, if the Rona is getting these adults to pay attention to what these kids are going through, then fuck it, I'll take it. I'm pretty sure the kids will take something. But some of the comments that we're seeing in the Twitch chat, because we don't have anybody right now on Facebook. Hi, Facebook. Glad to see you again. I know it's been about a month, but we're back.
But Twitch is lit right now.
We're getting a lot of good stuff from the Twitch. Blind Bad says taking love out of life. There's no intimacy there. Mercurius was saying, social distancing is necessary, but conditioning the kids to be afraid. That's a huge thing, because you're basically telling the kids to be afraid of each other. Remember we used to play those cootie games. Now this shit is real. It's real in the field. This is not a drill. These cooties, son, will fucking kill you, right?
So the cooties game is too dark now. It's a dark game now.
Mercurius says something that kind of fucked me up. I'm just going to read this verbatim. I've been crippled by anxiety most of my life, but I at least can remember my childhood being decent. The first thing I thought was, whoa, were you lucky to have a decent childhood? Because I knew nothing but anxiety and depression in my childhood since I was an infant. That's all I knew. So it just takes me back to wasn't anybody really paying attention to these kids beforehand? I also look at that mother. I don't see a father there. Right? Yeah. And she's talking about how hard it is to keep stock of his emotions and her emotions and all of these different things, and she's trying to work and she's trying to do that.
Yeah, and the kids see that,
right?
So
and the kids do feed off of that. But then we've got an element of society saying that that's the preferred way to raise a kid, which is a single parent household. Well, when the shit hits the fucking storm, now we're starting to see what happens when we all play out of position. We're seeing it in the economy. We're seeing it in the family structure. We're seeing it in our social system. We're seeing it in the school system.
That's because people have to have 7 jobs now.
Yeah. And everybody thought this shit was okay. You add a virus, the size of a virus, right? and it just upturns the entire fucking apple cart.
Not only you have to have 7 jobs, you have to like have school for your kid at home and manage that kid at home. Like, so from like 9 to 4
you gotta teach the
home,
kid and manage the emotions.
7 jobs and the jobs of your partner or whatever is just like a huge mess. So that's why I wanted to bring up the virus segment real quick, just to bring it home to the preschool or Wonder Children style. So so follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and all in all, Breonna Taylor. So
we're not forgetting that name.